It is difficult to judge this movie, and quite possible I misunderstand it, but let's give it a shot. In general, the movie is fine, the acting is decent, the cinematography interesting, the movie takes place in a single building, and the location is utilized quite nicely. I didn't recognize Lee Pass, aka Ronan the Accuser, aka King Thranduil, in this movie, but he is the most likable character, so that's a plus side. The rest of the cast is a bit of a mix-up of narcissists, and I mean the characters, not the actors. I don't know the actors, so I cannot and will not judge any of them. Well, I know of Pete Davidson, and he is also fine in his role. It is hard to review the movie without spoilers. At face value, this wants to be a slasher, but it's a failure as a slasher. Therefore, I will give it a shot to judge it without spoilers in the beginning. It starts stereotypical slasher movie. There's a remote party. In this case, they want to do a party in a mansion where a hurricane hits and then everybody starts dying. So fun, so stereotypical. And it is quite difficult. Like the first 40 minutes of this movie makes you want to quit it and leave and do something else. And I would say don't do that. It gets interesting, not good, but interesting. So I would say give this movie a watch. Maybe not in a cinema, but on demand. I would say you could give this a try. It's not that bad. And now there will be spoilers, so beware. The first 25 minutes or so are completely forgettable trash. Typical teeny nonsense, really bad music, dialogue that has nothing in it, and more posing than acting. A group of teens wants to do a party in a hurricane, as I said, and after some drinking and some drugs, they decided to play a game of bodies, hence the name of the movie, which maybe is familiar to you as the game Werewolf or as Among Us in real life. And just like in Among Us, there's some fighting amongst the friends shortly after they start the game, and the first game dead, so played dead body, turns up. And then the part of the movie begins that is difficult to grasp. After the first real dead person is found, the question begins, who is the killer? The suspicion lands immediately on the one white male that remains, so the girls arm themselves with knives and what have you and search for him. When they find him, they surround him and kind of fail to explain what happened. Instead, there's a lot of accusations thrown around and a really aggressive behavior from the girls, so he has nothing else to do but to defend himself. And at the end, they just beat him to death. That's literally it. After that, they justify that he must have done it because he is a vet. It turns out that vet was only used because he is a veterinarian assistant. And after that, the justification is, well, he must have done it because he's a white man. That is literally the explanation for why they beat this man to death. That's all they have. And this is the point where the movie suffers from the current climate, because there are productions out there like She-Hulk, Rings of Power, The 355, Charlie's Angels, that actually use that logic, where every male, especially if they're white, are either evil or stupid or incompetent or all of them. And there's no reason except they are the men, so they have to be. And this actually makes it difficult to see if this movie does it as a joke or really means it. And at this point, I wanted to kind of quit the cinema, but when you stick around, these typical current day Hollywood gimmicks, I will call them, keeps popping up again and again, and it maybe shows the side that this is a satire. What follows after this death is a run-through to every topic that would give Twitter a heart attack, except like in Fast Forward, like they run to every topic there is. The remaining girls accused each other of being the killer with various degree of sense or lack thereof. For example, the unsecure one is accused of being the killer because she's the unsecure one and seeks approval. The foreign one is guilty because she's the foreign one, and so on and so on. During the story, the lead character gets kicked out of the house and there's some yelling, and then she comes back, and then the narcissism kicks into overdrive. And it basically is just a game of who is the more downtrodden one in this group and who is the most pathetic one and therefore can't be the killer. A quick rundown on what happens. Girl A says she lied about going to university and having a job because her mother is actually sick, and that's why she left university, and she lost her job because the store closed, and she was too embarrassed to admit it, and she takes care of her mother because her mother has borderline and she wanted to be accepted, therefore she lied about everything. Then girl B jumps in and says she understands this completely because she has body dysphoria, which is laughed off by girl C, who complains that she was the one who got to rehab, and it's unfair because if she does coke, she gets sent to rehab, but if the white girl does coke, everything is fine. Which then is again countered by girl D, who said girl C is just toxic and therefore her parents cut her off of her trust fund, and that's the only reason she is there, because the first dead guy should talk to her parents so she could get her money back, which is countered by girl C saying that girl D only pretends to like Girl Speed podcast, which she then says is really hard work, which is laughed off by girl D, who complains that she is a poor black woman and she has to fight a lot, and this is countered by girl B again, who says, come on, your parents are professors at the university, you are not poor, just because your mansion has only 6 bathrooms instead of 10 doesn't mean you're poor. And which then in turn she makes fun of girl C's memoirs. And it goes on like this for a while. At the end of the 4 girls, 2 die, and only the couple who started the movie remains. There's also like a subplot where one of the girls, the lead, finds some underwear who belongs to girl D in the package of girl B, and she says she cheated on her, which just is in the movie to show that the girl lied, but that's pretty obvious, so it doesn't really add anything. And if you're wondering why I use the terms girl A, B, C, D, is because at this point they basically become their problems. Like every girl is just a flashy suit for their respective problems, and that's their entire personality. At the end, they find the phone of the first dead guy, who turns out is not really the first victim, because the guy tried to cut open a champagne bottle with a sword and kinda slashes himself, because he's an idiot. And also, the opening of a champagne bottle with a sword is treated like some sort of incredible magic trick, but that's in real life like actually pretty easy, so I don't know if anybody out there thinks that there's some impressive feat, but anyway. So, the entire movie happens only because each girl thinks she knows what's going on and refuses to compromise with the other girls. From the moment they find the first dead guy, they throw around accusations and thinking that they know best. The only and the first real victim is Greg, Lee Pace's character, and maybe Alice, Rachel Sennot's character. Everybody else dies either in an accident or they kill themselves. So, or they die in self-defense, so get killed by somebody else in self-defense. Also, in the entire movie, this Greg character is basically the only good person. The other ones are all just self-serving pricks. It seems that the movie tries to do some commentary and some satirical takedown of today's self-righteous climate. But I could be wrong about it, and this could also be a self-serving elitist happy fest from Hollywood, but I'm not sure about that. But I think this is meant to be a satire of the whole bubble mentality, like everybody thinks his problems are the worst and refuses to see things from other people's perspective. And it tries to comment on that. The problem is that the satire level, or the black comedy level, if you want to use this term, is layered on very, very thinly. Like I said, I was tempted to leave the cinema because it's so ridiculous, the virtual signal in this movie, that it's really hard to grasp when they mean something and when it's played for satirical purposes. There's even the line in the movie, feelings are facts, no, facts are facts. Like stating the obvious. But I'm not sure if this is really meant as a satire. I've seen it as such in the end, but throughout the movie it's difficult to grasp. That's why I can't really give it a higher score. In summary, the movie starts out as a very much by the numbers cheap teen slash movie. It's a real drag to get even to the halfway mark. It's really, really bad and boring. In the end, it gets a bit better. Then it's interesting what they actually want to tell you. And at the very end, when the satire part comes around, it's pretty late, pretty underwhelming, but still interesting enough that you have to give the movie props for trying it. Like there was an attempt and doing something unique, and therefore it shouldn't be judged too harshly. I mean, you have to try new things, and especially today where basically every movie seems to be the same. The attempt was there, and that's worth it. So as a slasher, it feels completely. As a horror, black comedy, satire, it is quite interesting and worth a try at home. In the cinema, I wouldn't say you should watch it. There are other movies you should watch in the cinema. But at home, if you got 90 minutes to spare, watch it and see for yourself if this really is just a Hollywood by the numbers wannabe slasher, or if it is a really clever satire of the current climate.